This is the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, giving you weekly sports analysis, opinions, and discussion. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and J-Raff.
At this point in time, I'm extremely happy that we never had a college football preview show and that we did not on air, so that there's any reference by anyone who listens to our show of our predicted record for Penn State this year.
That will stay in our text messages.
Yes, that'll be private. Just like everything else we say to each other, which would get us in a lot of trouble if it ever got out. A lot of secrets in terms of the sports world that we got to keep those to us. We're pretty high up in some sources, and I don't want those to get out there. But I am definitely glad on this somber Sunday that we never said what was going to happen with Penn State football this year.
Yeah.
Maybe we should just have come out with this now and just been like,
yeah, like posted it like our predictions after the fact.
Right. Yeah.
But anyway,
post dated them.
And honestly, for now, that's the depth of college football we're going to get into today.
Yeah.
So moving on.
And we're going to the NFL now, but before we get into our predictions, we're just quickly going to push through Deflategate here because we're sick and tired of talking about it. I think it's utterly ridiculous what happened in the courts this past week, but we're not going to get into it all that much. I know before we do our predictions for the NFC East and the playoffs in Super Bowl 50, we are going to read an email that we'll touch on in a bit, but I don't know how much commentary we're doing on it because we have a lot to cover tonight and only about 40 minutes to do it.
Yeah, so without getting into it too much, we'll touch on the email in just a second, but kind of like you said, regardless of how I may feel, and it's well known, Patriots hater here, and I've admitted before, a lot of that is jealousy. Like I don't hide from like the causes of the hatred for the Patriots. Like I just want to be clear. I feel like I do a good job of owning it. Like I'm not trying. Like I rarely go on base and say my unbiased opinion of the Patriots or my unbiased opinion of what should happen to the Patriots. Like I usually feel like that's not me. That like that I own. This is what I think should happen because I don't like the Patriots. And some of our fans like that, and some of our fans don't like that. But that's okay. Either way, I am really happy that whatever happens, at least for now, is behind us and we can get on. And Thursday night, there's football.
Yeah.
I may have to put it on mute.
Right.
As like at least for the first quarter or something like that. But I can deal with it because you know what? NFL football is back on Thursday, and like we said a little bit ago, I need NFL football because college football didn't. Like we said, we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about anything but NFL this evening. Just to stick to the schedule, we got a lot to cover. So before we do that and get into the fan email, we'll have Justin give you some of our contact information in case during the show you want to interact with us, and he's got that for you right now.
Yeah, and like Joey said, we're going to be talking NFL tonight. We're going to be talking NFC East. So the most important conference, at least when it comes to fandom, the best fans are in this conference, and
those Redskins and Giants followers,
and also the worst fans.
They are some of the best out there.
We'll just let that go for who you can kind of fill in where you feel appropriate. I'm sure we would maybe not. We probably wouldn't agree on that one as much as we would on. As we did on some of our picks this year. But anyway, we'd love to have your take on any of the teams or the divisions, and we're going to get into a kind of like our season overall predictions here at the very end. So we'd love to have you call the Mays Sandwich Shop hotline at 530-563-6297. Again, 530-563-6297. You can also email the show at any time using the Mays Sandwich Shop email inbox at joemaysandjraff@gmail.com. Again, joemaysandjraff@gmail.com.
You can also find us on a plethora of social media sites, primarily Facebook
Not just
and Twitter.
a lot, a plethora.
Yeah, a ton. It's just veritable jungle
we're
of
everywhere.
social media sites. Primarily Facebook and Twitter. That's where we're most active. It's not a social media site, but I do want to remind everyone that we switched over our audio-only feed to Mixlr. You can find us at mixlr.com/jmnjr-radio. And you could also just go directly to jmnjrradio.com. That audio stream auto-plays as soon as you log on there. And again, you can check our website, joemaysandjraff.com. We have a list of upcoming shows when I update it. The archive for both audio and video productions. And, you can watch the show live through that website instead of going directly to Ustream. So there are a lot of options out there to consume the show, and we invite you to interact with us while we're doing the show. So take advantage of everything that Justin told you, and, we'll get you on. We'll address your question and whatnot, which we'll do right now, jumping to the May Sandwich Shop email inbox, where we have 2 emails. One was sent to us 2 months ago, or maybe longer, that we'll get to in a little bit. But first, we're going to address one coming from where else? Rich in Massachusetts.
Surprise.
And I'm sure you know where this one's going. So I'll just read right through here what Rich said. Yes, it is finally all over. Time for some football. Yes, the preseason is over. Oh, you thought I meant the Deflategate or whatever the court case was. Well, thanks to the NFL, it is not over. Wouldn't you think that sitting out one game for not cooperating plus $1 million fine and 2 draft picks would be enough for the NFL? But no, they want blood just like most of the teams outside of New England. Since the fine for messing with the footballs was $25,000 per ball, this should have been put to bed. Anyway, let's get to Thursday night and the start of the NFL season. I will send you my selection and agree with most of yours after your show tonight. Hint for you, my team and one of your teams is in the Super Bowl. I wonder if Justin can figure it out. So obviously he's saying that it's because my team can't make the Super Bowl if his team makes it. He has Patriots-Eagles, so a rematch from the Super Bowl from, 11, 12 years ago?
Yeah, a long time ago. It was the
04 season, 05 Super Bowl?
Yeah, yep.
So, 11.
It's going to be 11 years.
11 years.
Yeah. Whew, man, it's a long time ago.
That is crazy to think about it. It's been that long ago. I don't really want to pick up too much. Like I said, we're not going to really dwell on Deflategate and the court mess. So, do you have any reaction to this?
I'm kind of surprised he picked the Eagles. I think while his Patriots pick, you could say, oh, it's a homer pick. I don't necessarily think it's a bad pick. Yeah. Picking them to go to the Super Bowl is never really a bad thing, I don't think, because they've proven over the last decade and a half or so that's pretty much the norm. We'll have to see how our picks kind of come out, and like you said, he'll give us his full rundown, his official prediction after the show. But I have to agree with him, like regardless of my views on whatever the outcome is or is so far, like he kind of mentions. I'm just glad it's at least for now over with, and we can just get on to football on Thursday night.
I agree with him in that too, and I'm ready to move on to the actual football Thursday night. If you really want to know my feelings on Deflategate and what happened in the court case with Brady, contact me off the air. But I've posted a couple pictures to our Joe Mays and J-Raff Show Facebook page. But I've also posted a couple of things on my personal page. So if you're Facebook friends with me, you've seen some of the things that I posted.
That's where you can get
some unfiltered stuff about it.
I wouldn't go as far as unfiltered.
You're right. I toned it down. I could have been a lot worse.
You can get the gist of
you can get the idea of what I'm thinking.
Text messages. Now that's unfiltered.
Yeah, that's exactly why no one can see our text messages. People probably think that, like, if they just cut into the show out of context, they probably like, what are these two doing? Like, what are they sending to each other, or what are they doing behind the scenes?
It's just, let's just put that we are oftentimes very clear about where we stand on multiple issues.
Yes. 99.9% of the time they are sports related. Yeah. So people watching this show, if you're actually you're listening to us live or in the archive, you would probably actually be really interested to see what we have to say unfiltered like that. But alas, Ustream doesn't allow swearing, so you gotta keep it toned down here for the children. Right. For the children. So all right, well, enough of that. Let's move on to the main portion of this evening, which is focusing on finally the NFC East, the last of our division previews. We did all 8 separately on a show. We're finally here at the last one. We did the AFC East last week. We both picked New England. Here we are with the NFC East. We're not going to dawdle. Let's start at the bottom. At the same time, who do we both have in the last place?
I just had to process that. I knew what you were saying. It just kind of...
All right, 4th place,
I got it.
NFC East on 3. We're the mascot. 1, 2, 3. Redskins.
Yeah, so I think we talked about this before the show when we were kind of making sure we had our, when you were compiling the kind of the spreadsheet of everything we've talked about so far in the weeks leading up to this. Not only do we agree a lot on the top choices, which again, Joe and I mentioned, we talk a lot of sports stuff all the time. Like we go back to the origins of the show, where basically we're just now recording the conversations we always had.
Yeah, essentially that's why we started this show.
So like this is nothing out of the norm, except for the fact that when it comes to like prediction shows, we may talk about some of the things we're like thinking about, but it's never like our picks. We never discuss our picks before the show. So we kind of, now again, we talk enough sports and know how we feel on certain players and things like that we can sometimes maybe see where the other one's going with their picks. But, we don't have, meetings beforehand to kind of discuss these yet. Right. We were very similar on a lot of our top picks, and our bottom picks were actually identical.
I think every single 4th place team we had exactly the same, and up till today, only one of our 1st place teams was different. That was way back when we did the NFC South, and you were going to go with Atlanta, and then last second you switched to New Orleans. Right. It's interesting to see we're pretty much on the same page. It's
as we get to the end here, we can touch on that a little bit more.
Yeah, and as you can see, this spoils a little bit of what we're going to talk about because we're going to do wild cards. But you can kind of see what we're thinking of some of the runner-up teams in the division races, where they're going to be. But you see the question mark because that's what we're talking about right now. And what's interesting is that we seem to think pretty highly of the NFC East because both of us have 2 teams making it.
Yeah, so we'll have to see where that kind of ends up. But I don't know exactly how this is going to play out yet, but I'm excited to kind of see over the next few minutes where we end up.
Yeah, so Redskins last place. Why? Well, there's dysfunction there.
They are the definition
poster boys
of dysfunction.
It's the Raiders of the East.
I was going to say, when we were younger, it was the Raiders. And I know that's probably, to some of our audience, like the Raiders.
It's really from 2003
probably
on.
Don't really view that, but necessarily the same way. But to us, like, the Raiders were dysfunction. Different coach almost all the time, different players all the time, like all kinds of stuff. Just could never really get anything going. Well, the owner was never on the same page as the coach.
Right.
That's the Redskins. All like words out of Washington are that essentially everyone but Dan Snyder and maybe his closest people in the organization want RG3 out. They didn't even want him. They wanted to cut him because if he gets hurt this year, they are guaranteed to pay him $16 million next year. Now, there would have been a cap hit if they cut him this year, I'm sure, but not $16 million, and they'd be free of that next year, But now, and I was reading this, and Bomani Jones, who we're not getting into other stuff, like, again, we'll talk there, but, like, he does bring up some good points sometimes, and so if RG3 is your 3rd quarterback, and your team isn't doing well, because we've seen Kirk Cousins, like, come in relief and be
he's a turnover
great.
Machine.
And then we've seen him, like, when he gets the job, kind of like last year, where he had longer spells, and they played Colt McCoy, right? And Colt McCoy seemed to have, like, at least was getting it done last year for Washington, at least better than they had earlier in the season. And then they just kind of went a different direction there. Now, they think highly enough of Colt McCoy to bring him back in possibly the 2 spot or whatever. But if RG3 is sitting as your 3rd quarterback and the season's not going well, which we just predicted it's not going to for the Redskins, how is he not going to get to start at some point? And if he starts, is he not likely to get hurt again? Like, and now you owe him the $16 million. Like, to get to kind of what Bomani Jones was saying, he's just like having him. If he's not your starter, how can you have him on your roster?
Right.
Like,
what's the
if you're
point?
the Redskins, not other teams. Like,
well,
if you're a team bringing him in as a backup, that's one thing. But in this situation, with all the drama and all that stuff that's going on, with the owner like wanting him there and all that stuff, how can you have him on the roster if he's not your starter? And if he's on the roster, how can, like, the owner's only saying, no, we have to keep him around, but we don't have to play him? Like, that makes no sense. Like, it's dysfunction, like, squared. You know, it's multiplied.
Unnamed sources that are players saying that, like, finally we can move on and be, like, a focused football team. Like, it's just toxic in that Redskins locker room, and that's never going to help anyone. You know, we've talked about in the past how players, coaches are creatures of habit. They don't like to see anything disturbed. Well, this is just a massive disturbance that hasn't gone away for 3 years now.
We just talked about in New England, now completely different scenario, but like how people on both sides are just happy it's over and done with, you know, like in that we can move on. You know, regardless of your feelings on Deflategate, you can move on. The Redskins, instead of like cutting it off and just being like, all right, we're going to move on, or no, we're giving this another shot, like they're just like, we're going to hang on enough that it still is drama for everyone, but not enough that,
it's,
you know, like
they've admitted to the mistake to, you know, it's like they admit the mistake to everyone else, but not the most important person in the, you know, in the relationship.
Right.
They're like, yeah, we totally screwed up, but we're gonna hang on.
And I'm not sure that RG3 can't be a quarterback on a playoff team again. I don't know.
I mean, what he did his rookie year was phenomenal.
Right. And it's not going to happen in Washington. It's not going to happen there. He needs to get out. Washington needs to get rid of him.
Yep.
And yet the two sides couldn't work that out. You know, mostly that's on Washington, I guess, but they couldn't bring themselves to do it because Dan Snyder can't get out of the way.
I don't know, and it's not off topic because obviously we're talking NFL, but it's not NFC East related other than it being about RG3. We heard a number of teams that would be interested if he got cut. I wonder if it would be – it's intriguing to me for him to somewhat return home if he could land in Houston and let O'Brien give him some pointers.
Especially if you get cut, because if you get cut, all of a sudden you're getting him like – I want to say discounted.
It is a discount.
Like, it is, because you're not going to be paying him first-round quarterback money, you know. And you probably get him for like a 2-year deal, you know, something like that. That could change the game for Houston. You know, we were talking, that's a big source
and they picked Brian Hoyer over Ryan Mallett, but, you know, why not bring him in and give him a chance? I guess if you're trying to decide between those two, you want to add another person into the aspect of that competition.
Or you have a place like, I don't know, and you know, I don't know the whole quarterback situations at some of these places,
Bills,
but like
Jets,
Bills possibly. I feel like the Bills are set elsewhere. I feel like I don't think Rex would necessarily go the RG3 route, but I'm not going to begin to try and predict what Rex Ryan would do, you know, actually. But like, what if he goes, like, he would want to be a starter, but what if he goes to be a backup, like in like Arizona, like under Bruce Arians, who has worked well with
take over for Carson Palmer,
and really kind of helped, you know, Andrew Luck in his transition into the league, which Andrew Luck was the first quarterback taking that. You know, it's just like, you know, with Carson Palmer, where he might actually get to play this year. I don't know. That's a lot of talk about the Redskins. Quarterback's just the beginning of their problems. Defense, they've had some solid parts there, but at the same time, they've had some aging parts, and they weren't as good last year as I thought they would be on defense. I think that trend kind of continues. I think defense is still going to be a little bit of a problem for them. And offensively, honestly, I don't know what to expect from the Redskins right now. If I have to pick them placing in the NFC East, I'm going to pick them as the worst team. So I'm honestly going to put them at like 6 wins. I think they get to 6 wins because I think Alfred Morris is good. I think they have some wide receiver weapons. If they can get a quarterback to get on the ball, and honestly, I think that's Colt McCoy. I don't think it's Cousins. I think Colt McCoy, maybe not a playoff caliber quarterback here, but I think he's the best option they have right now. I know people will disagree with that, but I don't think he got a fair shot in Cleveland. I don't think anyone ever gets a real shot in Cleveland. So I kind of think Colt McCoy, if he gets a shot, the Redskins could get the 6-ish wins.
I think.
Otherwise, it wouldn't surprise me if the wheels fall off and they get 2.
I do. I'm not going to go to that point and say they're the worst team in the league. They very well could be. They were 4-12 last year. I don't see them being any different.
On the other hand, I shouldn't. I'm going to say, on the other hand, at 2 wins, Christian Hackenberg would fit right in on an offensive line that can't protect the quarterback.
Let's just not.
I couldn't do it. Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
I think the Redskins are the same. What changes do they make for the better to say that they're worth more than 4 wins? Is not having the RG3 distraction carry over into the regular season? Does that make a difference?
I think having a quarterback that buys into Jay Gruden's system, whether they are a good enough quarterback or not, is an improvement over having a quarterback that doesn't fit and doesn't buy in, just trying to fit into the system and then trying to make that change on the fly. You know what I mean? So having Cousins or McCoy who are going to buy in to Jay Gruden and do what he wants, and they'll be able to run the ball with Alfred Morris and, get it to, hopefully you can create some big plays for Deshaun. I say hopefully for them, not for me. I hope the Redskins are awful, but I have them as the worst.
I can't see them getting more than 4 or 5 wins, so I definitely have them in last place. All right, moving on, third place. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Giants. Yeah, I kind of come back to the same thing that I finished there with the Redskins. What have they done to get better? Eli's a year older, and we're not going to go back and talk about it, but I do want to mention that story that came out about Eli wanting to be the highest paid player in the league. That made me laugh. I couldn't stop laughing. Are you serious? Are you kidding me?
His time to do that is not now.
No, it was after the second Super Bowl win, which is is now 4 years ago.
Right.
So they're due, right?
They are due because there's lots of talk Coughlin being done. Actually, I thought it was last year because Coughlin and Eli, there's lots of talk they're going to be pushed out. Last year would have been the year. But like you said,
07 season,
I think
11 season. 15 season. This is their year. Maybe I should change this. Maybe I should take them.
I hope not, but who knows? I wouldn't surprise me if Eli puts together a great season and has the best season of any quarterback in the division. It wouldn't surprise me. It's not out of the question. Because in terms of results, overall, he's had the best seasons. Yet everything kind of since that last Super Bowl has kind of been otherwise, and there were some years where he may have been the worst. He's been a turnover machine. The Giants have been a turnover machine. I don't really know what they have at running back, which under Coughlin and trying to protect Eli is not going to be helpful. I mean, I know they have some people there, but it didn't really work out the way they had hoped the last couple years. The good news for him is they have an amazing wide receiver in Odell Beckham Jr., had a great first year. I feel like people are super high on him. I don't think he's as good as everyone's saying. Everyone has him ranked as a top 3 wide receiver in the league.
Catch.
He's a great wide receiver, but he's not that good.
No,
honestly, if Victor Cruz comes back as strong as before, Odell Beckham Jr. might not be the best wide receiver on his team.
They also have Ruben Randall, too.
Right.
He's no slouch.
Right.
People go gaga over Odell Beckham. And
combined, they have a good wide receiver.
Show me more. Show me it all the time.
Right. We've seen lots of wide receivers have a great rookie year and then nothing, so
anytime that a kid makes even a standard catch, but it was one-handed, the kids are all like, Odell. I'm like, God, it was one catch. Get over it. Seriously. I'm already tired of hearing his name, and it was one season, one catch.
But I think they're in there around 500.
That'd be an improvement for them as well, because they were 6-10 last season.
And I think they're better than 6-10. Again, if things start to go poorly and Eli's turning the ball over, though, that's one. This is one where I think. Again, obviously if they win a couple more games than I haven't predicted for, they could be in the playoffs. But at the same time, I feel like if Eli's turning the ball over like he has the last couple years, the wheels could come off quick for Tom Coughlin and the Giants as well. I think there's a lot in the East where things like the high end is really high for I would say the Giants even, just because you never know. I feel like they played so far under their potential last year.
Right.
I feel like their potential may have dropped a little bit this year, but I think they play closer to their potential. Does that make sense?
I understand.
If their potential last year was 11 or 12 wins, they played so far below that. If their potential this year is, 8 or 9 wins, I feel like they play closer to that so that they're better, even if they don't meet their potential this year.
I tend to agree with you. I'll say 7 to 8. I don't think they're awful, but again, I'm like, what have they done really to get that much better? But I do, looking at some statistics from last year, they might have been a tad unlucky. I think they're a little bit more more even than their 6-10 record. So I'll say maybe a tad improvement, but I don't know if it's enough to let Coughlin keep his job, because if they go 7-9 or 8-8, it's been a number of years now since they've been any good.
Let's just put it in perspective for last year. They gave up the same amount of points as the Eagles, 400 points, which is a lot, but
they scored almost 100 fewer.
Right. Yeah. The Eagles scored 94 more points than the Giants last year. And that 94 points.
4-game swing.
Yeah, 4 games.
The Eagles went 10-6, Giants were 6-10.
They need to be able to score, and offensively, they'll get Victor Cruz back probably, but just I don't know. Is Victor Cruz the difference between 4 wins? Is he a 4-win swing?
No.
I don't know that anybody is a 4-win swing in the NFL. Brady wasn't a 4-game swing in terms of Vegas for the Patriots. Virtually no one is a 4-game swing. I guess Peyton Manning was more than that when he was out in India.
Yeah, that's like a 12-game swing.
But you get the idea. Victor Cruz is not a 4-game swing. It takes a lot. They're gonna have to play a lot better as well, and I think they're better than last year, but still not there.
Tom Coughlin and his Giants, since they won the Super Bowl following the 2011 season, are stuck in that average team rotation where they missed the playoff the next season. They went the same as they did the year before and won the Super Bowl at 9-7. The next year they went 9-7, nothing. 2013, 7-9. Last year, 6-10. Right. We're saying again 7 or 8 wins, and they're stuck there in mediocrity.
7 or 8 wins and no playoffs, and Coughlin's out.
I think this is the end of the road for him, and I think he'll probably be done in the NFL.
I think so too. I think he's reached the point he'd probably retire. I would imagine.
He'll be turning 70. He's just turned 69.
I love that they give the age to the thousandth.
Yeah, 69.006.
So apparently he just turned 69.
They probably have a sorting system that specifics.
It's funny that and they probably use it for players all the time, but like for the coaches, it's just funny.
So Tom Coughlin and the Giants, no playoffs for you this year. Sorry, probably around 500, maybe a tad below. And if Coughlin goes, do they cut bait with Eli? They're talking about an extension, but if you're bringing in a new coach, you think the new coach wants to deal with Eli?
How old does Eli turn?
Eli is
turn 36
old too.
This year or something.
Yeah,
like that?
I think I told you that when I was laughing my butt off.
I thought he was like my age.
He'll be 35 in January.
Wow. Yeah, I thought he was like maybe going to turn 33, But I know, I'm like, oh, that's 2 years different. Well, 2 years difference is a big difference in the NFL. When you're talking about,
I don't get this age thing.
Lifespan.
That doesn't correlate at all. 34.246. His birthday's January 3rd.
I don't know.
He's 34 and will be 35 in January.
Right.
So there's that.
Yeah, so he probably doesn't have he might have one.
His real name's Alicia.
I had no idea.
Why doesn't anyone know
Or is
that?
it Elijah, but it's just spelled
different? Yeah, you're right. It's probably Elijah, but it's spelled with an SH.
It's spelled Alicia.
It's spelled Alicia, right. I have a friend from high school whose name was Alicia, spelled exactly right.
Things I wish I would have known before now.
15 years ago or 12 years ago, however long he's been in the league now. But this is his 11th season.
Yeah, so he's not a young quarterback anymore. So it wouldn't surprise me if they cut him, especially if they have a season that's worth not keeping Coughlin around.
He's made this. I thought he was more injury prone. He's started every game.
Yeah.
Since like the middle of his rookie season.
Good genes there, I think.
Yeah, definitely good genes. I mean, you got to think with what Peyton was.
I can't get over with Eli in my mind. I always think of the game he got in for an injured Kurt Warner against the Eagles, and he was just running around the line of scrimmage, and this is back at the Vet, I believe, and just kind of like wandering around, like not wanting to cross the line where you would have to run, and just completely oblivious to like a linebacker or defensive end like coming from behind and just crushes him from behind. But anyway, I think the Giants are the second worst team in the division, around 500. So.
All right, that brings us to here it comes. What's it going to be?
I know what I'm doing.
I know we got the eternal optimist over here. I'm a realist, so here we go. On 3. Second place, NFC East. 1, 2, 3.
Cowboys.
Eagles.
I'll go.
Go ahead.
All right, because then you're yours
rebuttal
can lead into mine. All right. So, anyway, the Cowboys, I think they'll be able to run behind their offensive line because their offensive line is arguably the best in football. I think their offensive line is a tad overrated in the sense that people are like, oh, you can literally put anyone behind there and they'll rush for the same yards DeMarco did last year. I don't think that's the case. I think they'll be productive behind that line. I don't want to make it sound like that. But, Darren McFadden will get hurt taking a handoff. Now I say that he'll probably rush for like 2,800 yards this year somehow. Romo is injury prone with his back. Like, I'm not going to go all on injuries here because that's a dangerous precedent to set when I pick my first place team here. But I just think I think what we saw from the Cowboys last year was about as good as they can get. Their defense still statistically wasn't that good last year. Their offense hit a lot of that. I think their offense is a slight regression this year. Slight. I think Tony Romo is still very, very good. Dez Bryant is really good. They have some other weapons there. The offensive line, like I said, will be good. But I think, again, Tony Romo is not a young quarterback. And so I think kind of as you go through this, I just think last year was their chance. Thankfully Dez didn't catch the ball, and, we don't have to worry about that. But I think
Romo's actually older than Eli.
Right,
He'll be 36 in April.
So I just think that there's a slight regression there, and I think the Eagles are better than they were last year. That's my take. I'll stop there for now.
You want to hear why I don't?
I'll stop there for now. But I think they're going to be. I think they'll be okay. I think they're going to be better than okay. I'm still going to put them at 10 wins, but I think
you essentially have them flipping with what they did last year.
Yes.
You have the Eagles at probably around 12-4, and the Cowboys at 10-6. Because we know that you have the Eagles winning, but the Cowboys in as a wild card.
I have the Eagles at 11 or 12 wins, the Cowboys at 10 or 11 wins. So
pretty
virtually
close.
neck and neck, coming down to probably that second time they play, because I think they play in week 2. But
for the first time, right?
Yeah.
I'm a little. I didn't want to reveal this leading up to it, but I almost didn't have the Eagles in second.
It doesn't really surprise me. Like, I think people are underselling the Giants, and including me.
Yeah, and I think I just
did
it. I just did it, but maybe it's just you, and I just don't want to poo-poo on your parade here.
That's like the opposite of what I do.
I think I'm going to give the Eagles the benefit of the doubt and say that while I don't want to buy into it too much, I think
you're a Chip Kelly believer.
Well, I mean,
I know that's
contrary
unfair.
to what we talked about when he took the job. So far, up to this point, I can't say I hate what he's done, but remaking the entire rosters is crazy. That's crazy. And if it
remaking
works
the
out,
entire roster of a 10-6 team. Now, I always bring up, people bring up the stats of what the roster is compared to when he took over, and I am always quick to point that the team he took over was a 4-12 team. If you look at any 4-12 team, 80% of that roster is not going to be there in 3 years. There's a reason they were. So there's been, and it hasn't just been a head coach change with the Eagles. Now it's everyone. Everyone in that front office, is not there or in different roles. They kind of play around with that with Howie Roseman, but Howie Roseman is not. He's a glorified assistant GM basically now. He has no decision-making power in that organization. It's Chip's show. So, no, it is crazy that they've turned over the roster so much.
Since Chip Kelly arrived, the last 7 leading receivers have left. 5 of them were Deshaun Jackson. The other 2 were Jeremy Maclin. The last 6 leading rushers are gone, all of them being LaShawn McCoy. The 2 quarterbacks from the first 2 years he was there, Foles, he's better than Sanchez. He would have kept playing if he didn't get hurt. Gone. Their best player in terms of Pro Football Reference approximate value, Cox, still there, amazingly. Foles, gone. Vic, but that's not Chip Kelly, so not even going to go down to that list.
Right.
That much turmoil off-season issues. Chip Kelly may be able to get through it, but can the entire locker room do it? They've had a strong preseason, but again, I'm on the fence there.
Right.
Some, you want to be like, okay, that's good. I like to see that. I like to see that the backups, the rotational guys,
I feel like there's more depth now with guys that fit Chip's stuff than there were before, which is a positive thing because you need the depth with the stuff Chip does. When I look at it, like, do I feel good about the preseason? Yes. Do I feel like the preseason justifies a great pick? No. All those Colts teams that went 0-4, like every year Peyton Manning was in Indianapolis and then would go out and win at like a minimum of 12 games. Preseason does not correlate to wins.
No, it does not. We've seen many times teams go 0-4 and win the Super Bowl.
That being said, I was very glad the Eagles lost their last
there you go.
game
so you don't have the 4-0
I don't think any team has ever won 4 games and then won the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I look at the Eagles. And
I get it. Like I'm all in, and it's clearly a homer. I'm gonna say clearly. Like I feel like you could justify your picks of the Eagles. Anyone. For me, like the fan side of me wants to buy in, and that's definitely a part of it. Like I said before with the Patriots stuff, like I feel like I own that. I'm trying to own this here. Like being on the fence. All other things equal. Except that because I am the fan, it's pushing me to just be like, you know what? Forget it. I'm all in. I'm all in.
New quarterback.
I agree.
New running backs.
Right, I agree.
New offensive linemen.
And I use this for some of my
new
other
secondary.
Ones. I use this for someone. There's
new
lots of ifs. If I don't think they need all of them to work out. If the defense is if the secondary is better than last year, they don't have to be great. But if they're better than last year, by the way, this is kind of crazy. I saw this afternoon. Eagles are one of the teams possibly interested in Cam Chancellor.
Yeah, like I seen that making the rounds.
I don't know what they'd have to give up for him though. Like, who knows? But anyway, like that's just kind of crazy. But anyway, like I don't know.
My final thought, I'll focus on the running backs because it leads me into my Cowboys conversation. One, Ryan Matthews is always injured. I don't know if you can count on him. I like Darren Sproles, probably the best of the 3, but he's the scat back, change of pace guy, so that's tough.
I feel like he's going to be like a slot wide receiver this year.
I dislike McCoy. It's not his athleticism or on-the-field productivity.
Right. No, I agree.
DeMarco Murray, while I think he was underrated before last year, now he's completely overrated and a product of that system and that line. I don't know that the Eagles can match that. Now, he'll be in a rotation, which should be good for him, but he has had injury histories or problems in the past, and that didn't happen last year.
Right.
He's a major fumble issue, and as a fantasy owner of him, I know that all too well. So I just, honestly, I have them, I'm giving them the nod as my actually top wild card team. I'm kind of wavering on that, but I'll stick with it. I'll say they get 10 wins, and they're second place in the NFC East. But I'm a little hesitant to make the pick because part of me is screaming that I'm wondering if all of this is going to work out.
And I'm kind of the same way. I don't know. The fan in me is basically giving them the benefit of the doubt on all those ifs you mentioned. And I like the idea of having the rotation at running back. It hopefully will help with some of the issue problems that you mentioned that both of the top 2 running backs have. I think the thing I think about here is the Eagles don't need a season like last year from DeMarco Murray. Like, they don't need the 1,800 yards, and they need, if they get 1,200 yards, and I think that would be huge. 1,200 yards would be a great season for DeMarco Murray because of the rotation that I anticipate being in there. I think his touchdowns will drop off a little bit. I honestly don't know how many touchdowns he had last year, but I think he'll drop off just because of the system. But I think Ryan Matthews is also going to benefit from it, whereas they kept trying to push him into like a bigger role in San Diego and have him be they tried to kind of make him into something he wasn't out there, I think, and that was kind of like an every down back. I think he fits well. I think Chip will use him well. And I think Darren Sproles, that Chip says he wants to focus on getting him more touches this year. Who knows how that actually plays out. because as you saw, and it just reemphasized with the quarterback things, the third quarterback spot, and it's like no one should ever pretend to even have an idea what Chip Kelly is thinking, because when they traded Barkley, everyone just assumed Tebow was going to make the team, and then
nope.
he doesn't. So I'm all in. I think the Eagles get 12 wins. Actually, I'm going to put them at 11 wins. 11 wins, possibly 12.
You have Dallas 10 to 11 in second, Eagles 11 to 12.
Dallas is getting one of the wild card spots for me in the NFC.
All right.
I think it's going to come down to the very end of the season.
Now, what do I have to say
just like last year
about Dallas? I think that they have to do it this year, because I think if they miss the playoffs, that Garrett is done.
Well, I think
Romo could be done.
I agree with Garrett, because it'll be viewed as a regression.
Well, yeah, and the Cowboys have not made the playoffs in back-to-back seasons since 06-07. So this is a big year. I mean, like we said, Tony Romo will be 36 in April. His time's winding down. Garrett has to do something. I think they have the talent. I buy into the offensive line in the system, and one of the texts from my dad says he wants to know what we think about the Cowboys adding Christine Michael. They added him in trade today for the Seahawks. He hasn't done much behind Marshawn Lynch, but they were very high on him. Maybe a change of scenery will help something. They have they kind of are pulling an Eagles. They have a stable of backs. Who's going to excel? Christine Michael played ball at Texas A&M. Maybe the homecoming will help trigger something. I don't know that they were kind of doing it before the Cowboys until DeMarco Murray exploded last year. They didn't have they had been using a duo of backs before, so I don't think there'll be too much of a regression. It's just it'll be 2 or 3 guys getting what Murray did last year instead of one person.
One of the areas that I think will be interesting for the Cowboys is going to be, what are you going to see out of Jason Witten? He showed some decline last year, not necessarily in his, like, if you were evaluating as like a GM, not necessarily bad, but in terms of like statistical production, a drop off. Is that going to continue? Is that going to have an effect on the play of the wide receivers? I'm interested to see with the guys they have around. I know, some people like Cole Beasley,
Well, they're high on Gavin Escobar.
Right. And they need someone opposite of Dez like that they can get some consistent. And I'm not saying you need another fantastic wide receiver. You just need somebody that can take advantage of double teams that Dez is going to draw all the time. That's what you need to do. You need
right.
And at times that was Cole Beasley last year, but every now and then he would just get lit up across the middle. And the offensive line, I kind of, everything went right for them last year on the offensive line. This may be like I'm not like rooting for an injury here. I just kind of look at the Eagles' offensive line 2 years ago, where everything went right, and they were like the best offensive line in the league 2 years ago. Now I get they weren't like so young, like I understand that, but they were a really good offensive line 2 years ago, and then last year just the wheels fell off, injuries and all kinds of stuff, and is it reasonable to expect back-to-back stellar years from the offensive line for the Cowboys? I know it's not the same situation. I know they've got a lot of young guys there and they have depth now. But like, some of those guys like Free, who is there, he was a liability, and then last year all of a sudden it's just like really good. He was getting penalties.
Well, I think when you get talent around you like that, I think it helps.
Right. No, and absolutely. And it's going to be one of those things where I don't know. And I think they're very good. I just have them in second place because I don't like them.
Say it. Just tell us how you really feel. I think the next point from my dad in text, and I agree with him in that. We don't have the time to go in depth. If I'm to picking units, I pick the Cowboys defense over the Eagles defense until they show me that their new additions are better this year. I think the Eagles just they weren't strong at points, especially in the secondary. Now they're doing a lot of things different this year. They had a lot of new, Chip Kelly's team, complete overhaul. Maybe they'll surprise people. Maybe they play like they did at times in the preseason.
Well, there's been some shakeups in the coaching staff there too.
I take Dallas over Philly in that department.
Yeah, I can get that. I can see it. I view it as kind of like a toss-up, but I can see I can see that. I'm going to take the Eagles as, even if they're not better than Dallas, being significantly better than last year. Again, I think better than Dallas, or not better than Dallas, but better than last year, I think has the potential to be good enough for the Eagles. So that's kind of what I'm going with. That the better defense, even if it's not as good as Dallas, will be good enough for them with the offense this year.
All right. Wild cards, playoff predictions, Super Bowls. My 2 AFC wild cards: number 1, Miami; 2, Cincinnati. You agree with me? You have Miami number 1,
right?
And San Diego is in there number 2.
And which means some interesting decisions in Cincinnati for Lewis.
Could that be the end of the trail for
Dalton.
Andy Dalton and Marvin Lewis?
Yeah, I don't know about Lewis, but I definitely think this is Dalton's last go around. And honestly, I don't have him making the playoffs.
I think they're tied together. So.
I don't have him making the playoffs, but they need to. If they don't, he's gone.
In the NFC, I have Philly as wild card 1. I'm a little hesitant on that now. I think I should have shifted him to 2, but I'll keep him there at 1. I have Arizona the second one. I think they're both in there at 10 wins.
Right.
We flip-flop. You have Arizona as the 1 and Dallas as the 2.
And again, I put Arizona, Dallas, and Philly, and I think you similar might have a little bit more separation there, but I have Arizona, Dallas, Philly all kind of there within a game. Tiebreakers kind of sorting it out.
They're the same 3 teams that I was trying to sort out.
I want, obviously, the Eagles to win the East with lots of separation. I don't know that it's going to happen. I think Dallas is right there, and it's going to be a lot like last year. But this year, I think both teams make it as opposed to last year where the Eagles did
I had
not.
said in the NFC between the East and the division, the wild cards, there were 4 teams I had 3 spots for. Do you know the team that I left out?
Was it the Giants?
No.
Oh, I don't know.
Minnesota.
Ooh, man, you're really in on them. I like Minnesota. I think I don't know if they have enough.
The reason I kept them out is because I think it's a year early.
Right.
I think another year, if I see Teddy Bridgewater make the progression
so you think
that he
like
needs.
a 32-year-old AP is the running back that they
Well,
need.
that's the thing. That's why I'm like, well, do they need to do it now?
And who knows? Maybe they
we'll
will.
See.
Minnesota is going to be interesting this year.
All right, conference championship game. I have Indianapolis versus Pittsburgh. You have Indianapolis versus the Patriots.
Right, I do.
In the NFC, I have Green Bay versus Seattle, and you have Green Bay versus the Eagles.
Yes.
Now, my Super Bowl is the Seahawks for the 3rd straight year. This time they get it done. They beat the Patriots, they beat the Colts, who beat the Steelers in the AFC Conference Championship game. Seattle takes out Green Bay once again in the NFC. So Seattle over Indianapolis in Super Bowl 50. I think I feel bad about that because I think it's the number 1s from both at least going in. A lot of people are leaning that way, but that's how I feel, so I'm going with it. You didn't fill yours in, so what are you doing? Are you going Homer all the way?
You know what? Why not? Philly against New England.
So you want full-on rematch from 11 years ago.
Right, and I think with properly inflated balls and no, video shenanigans, I think the Eagles
just run
get
through
it
the
done
list, right? Just run through the list.
Now we're going to get emails again.
Now we're just going to get texts from my dad about you being at home. We're going to get texts and emails from New England about people harping on all their...
And here's the thing. If I'm picking purely on football here, that's a stupid pick, but it's not purely football. Like... This might be the first time I've just gone full homer. Usually I don't pick the Eagles because I don't want to jinx it. This year, I don't know that I really think it's going to happen, so why not? Eagles. Eagles over the Patriots.
All right, well, there you go. That is how we see the 2015 NFL season playing out. We thank you for joining us over the last 11 weeks. It took us to do the 8 divisions and get our Super Bowl predictions, but we're at the end of our show. We got to get going.
And now it's time for actual football this week.
Now, yes, Thursday, NBC. Steelers at Patriots, 2 of the teams that we both think will be one of the better ones in the NFL this season. Should be an excellent start to the season, and then we get all the way underway on Sunday with a full slate of games, Sunday Night Football, 2 Monday Night Football games then. So it should be awesome, and obviously almost every Sunday we'll have a recap of that week going on.
Right.
A few Sundays here and there we'll do a new show, The Bulldog Hour, but most of the time we'll be here talking NFL.
Yep, so looking forward to it. Glad we finally made it, and that we're actually getting to the football part of the football season.
Yes, definitely. So we'll be back next week talking NFL Week 1. And shout out before we go, I do want to say once again, happy 30th birthday to my wife. She celebrated yesterday, and my dad says I need to get a new co-host.
I'm hearing this a lot lately from lots of different people. That doesn't really make
any shout outs from you?
Not off the top of my head, no.
All right. Well, then thanks for joining us. This wraps up the 185th episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show.
We hope you tune in every Sunday evening at 6:30 for our take on sports. Until next time, I'm J-Raff.
And I'm Joe Mays. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. Don't forget, you can download each episode of the show from the podcast section of the iTunes Store. We'll see you next time, and thanks again for listening.